New roles have just been spoiled for Vashtorr the Archifane, the new character, big demon guy for the Chaos Space Marine faction, as well as his entire army of Renown, and they're already kind of spawning memes around the internet. So, let's dive into them. What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and today we're talking about the leaked rules for Vashtorr the Archifane and his army of Renown. I don't think I'm going to dilly-dally too much, so let's go ahead and dive right in. And as always, if you enjoy my Warhammer 40k content, go ahead and hit like on the video, subscribe on the channel, and do all that YouTube stuff. First up, let's talk about Vashtorr the Archifane himself. Now, for those who don't know, this is a new special character being added to the universe of Warhammer 40k. He is the Warden of the Soul Forge, which I guess is a place in the warp that makes all the demon engines and soul grinders and things. So he is extremely demon engine focused, and that's what we're getting both from Vashtorr himself and from his army of Renown. Taking a look at his own datasheet, he is a whopping 13 power level, coming in at probably somewhere between 250 and 260 points, which is quite a few of those points. He does have a pretty impressive stat block, especially for a large character. Move 12, and he does have the fly keyword, so he's going to be a pretty speedy lad. A 2+ weapon skill, a 3+ ballistic skill, which does not matter because he doesn't have any weapons that do not automatically hit. Strength 7, toughness 7, 14 wounds, as well as 7 attacks on a 2+ save. He does degrade both movement and attacks, unfortunately, but his weapon skill remains the same. So he only loses a little bit of potential damage in melee as he degrades. He's got 2 weapons equipped, Vashtorr's Claw, which is his heavy flamer. It's just an AP2 flamer, that's it, which that's pretty, that's all right, okay, sure, nice. As well as Vashtorr's Hammer, which is an appropriate name for a hammer that someone named Vashtorr would be carrying, which is almost exactly a thunder hammer that does not impede its hit roll, so it doesn't suffer the -1 to hit penalty that we normally see from thunder hammers. It does have a special effect against vehicles, however. A wound roll of 5+ automatically inflicts 4 mortal wounds and ends the attack sequence, bypassing saves and damage reduction effects. It is interesting that this is an effect that actually does more mortal wounds than the damage characteristic of the attack, as these damage replacement effects typically just convert the damage of the weapon into mortal wounds. But no, Vashtorr does extra damage against vehicles. It's also on a 5+, which is a little interesting. Vashtorr's melee stats are relatively mediocre, especially for his points tag. 7 attacks at 3 damage is fine, but he does punch vehicles real hard, since it's likely you'll get at least 1 or 2 of those mortal wound triggers off. So he's going to be plowing you for 8 mortal wounds plus whatever his AP2 damage is dealing. Now, it is a little bit weird. It is only AP2. That's pretty easily savable. So the raw damage from his hammer is not that great, but as long as he gets the mortal wound effect, it's going to be pretty exciting. At strength 14, too, he does get those wounds through quite often. He has a Body of Unholy Artifice. This gives him a 4+ invulnerable save and reduces damage against him by 1. That makes him pretty difficult to kill. Not tough enough that, you know, an entire army shooting at him won't kill him, because, importantly, he is a character, but he has 14 wounds, so he cannot be character protected or lookout surd for. However, with this special ability, it's going to be difficult for random units to kill him, and he can commit into melee pretty safely without being too worried about getting punched down. The most impactful defensive benefit that Vashtorr has is mostly not being worth shooting at, and that's because his only special ability is the Will of the Archifane. This lets him choose one of 3 special abilities. Either he just becomes a regular warpsmith, not even anything special, just gives +1 to hit to a demon engine. It's not even a vehicle model. It's actually worse than a warpsmith. Okay, sure. The second option for the ability is Ghost in the Machine, which selects an enemy unit within 18 inches and visibility and halves the range characteristic of ranged weapons that model is equipped with. I do appreciate that this is any unit. It doesn't have to be vehicles only. What the weird thing about this ability is that it is a command phase ability, so you can't move up to apply it, and it is only 18-inch range, which means that in order for Vashtorr to target a unit with that ability, they already have to be extremely close to him, meaning that having the ranged weapons probably doesn't do anything. The one situation in which I think it could be useful is if you have extremely short-ranged weapons. So if you are firing flamers or, you know, bolt storm aggressors and you're shooting at range 12 to 18, having that is pretty impactful. You drop that down to a very close range, and especially if you're a relatively slow unit, make it difficult for them to shoot with. So in the situation where Vashtorr is specifically fighting against an army of Space Marine aggressors, this ability might be good. Otherwise, why? Why is it only 18-inch range? Why isn't it just visible? I think that would be pretty interesting. If he's taking your, you know, 36-inch range guns and dropping them down to 18, that makes a lot of sense. But currently, if you drop it down to 18, then they'll just shoot you. So okay. Last but certainly not least, you can select a vehicle unit within 18 inches invisible and have the move and attacks characteristic of models in that unit. This one I do like because it can really hamper melee focused vehicles. Things like dreadnoughts will get absolutely destroyed by Vashtorr. Not only can he bypass their damage reduction by mortal wounding them to death with his hammer, but he can also make them punch back ridiculously feebly. That poor Brutalis Dreadnought is having a tough time against Vashtorr the Archifane over here. He himself has the Heretic Astartes and Traitoris Astartes keywords, I think, as is to be expected, and he is also an Agent of Chaos, meaning that he can get brought into other Chaos lists without breaking faction abilities. I'm adding this in post because I just realized that I think Vashtorr is supposed to be the guy who builds the Soul Grinders, but being a Chaos Space Marine unit and not a Chaos Demons unit, and to my knowledge, not having any keywords that allow him to be brought in a Chaos Demons detachment means you can't actually use him with Soul Grinders, I don't think, unless they're being brought maybe in a Demonic Allies detachment in a Heretic Astartes list that includes him. I'm not 100% sure on that. There may be technology to allow Agents of Chaos to go into Demons lists that I'm not aware of, but because he doesn't share any keywords besides Chaos with the Demons Codex, I don't think you can bring him in an actual Demons detachment, which just feels kind of weird. Most often, though, you're going to be taking Vashtorr for the opportunity to take him in his Army of Renown. I'll drop a link down in the description for the PDF to the Army of Renown if you want to check it out yourself, but let's give us a little bit of a gander through the cogs of Vashtorr. This Army of Renown requires that your entire army be Traitoris Astartes. Your warlord must be Vashtorr the Archifane and cannot include any other named characters or demon princes. In addition, you also can't include any cult infantry, Khorne Berserkers, Rubric Marines, Plague Marines, or Noise Marines cannot be played. You also lose some additional abilities. You, generally speaking, lose access to your wanton destruction, massacre, and slaughter benefits. These are the exploding sixes that Chaos Space Marines usually get depending on the battle round that they're currently in, whether that's to ranged weapons or melee weapons or various types of guns. However, demon engines specifically are always considered to be engaged in all three at all times, meaning they're going to get exploding attacks with every single one of their weapons, which is pretty cool. The other thing you lose, however, is access to any Legion abilities. So despite the fact that we are playing a demon engine focused army, we cannot take sub-factions that are keyed around playing vehicles or demon engine. That does unlock, however, a couple of relics and stratagems for the army, including the Talisman of the Forge, which is a very exciting one. Allows you to pick a demon engine within 9 inches of the bearer in the command phase and give it a 5+ damage ignore. The Helm of the Cyberphage gives +1 AP to all demon engines within 6 when they target enemy vehicles. And the Spite Iron Goad allows a demon engine within 9 of the bearer, chosen in the command phase, to fall back, shoot, and charge without penalty. You also unlock a couple pretty interesting stratagems. Forge Surge is designed specifically for those plasma cannon Forge Fiends. It allows you to just max the number of shots you get on your random shot weapons. Master's Guidance gives a Chapter Master effect for 2 CP for a single phase to your warlord, so Vashtorr is able to give full hit rerolls to all demon engines within 6. Cogitated Fates removes cover from an enemy. It's essentially just a Solar Pulse from Necrons, but in Chaos Space Marines, so, I mean, that's nice, I guess. Glitch Curse allows you to deal mortal wounds in response to an enemy who targets a unit within 6 inches of your warlord, as long as that enemy is visible to your warlord. Honestly, this seems like it has too many hoops to jump through to be particularly useful. Kako Spark Prattle is an Agents of Vect ability. Might be the best stratagem in the list here. For 1 CP, you can increase the cost of an opponent's stratagem by 1 for the remainder of the battle after its first use. So, for example, if they are going to be using a 1 CP stratagem to reroll their hit rolls of 1 or something, then after the first time they use that, in response to that first use, you can use this, and that becomes a 2 CP stratagem for the rest of the game, which, especially for armies that are built around specific stratagems, can really, really hamper their CP economy. Foul Alterations allows you to advance, shoot, and charge. I would say without penalty, but if you have assault weapons, they will still suffer the -1 to hit. This is for a Demon Engine unit, and this stratagem is actually pretty solid. Getting advance and charge on anything for a single CP is a pretty good deal. In my opinion, the stratagems are definitely the highlight of this entire leak here, because some of these are pretty solid. I do think that it's going to be a tough sell losing out on Legion traits and Legion stratagems for Vashtorr stratagems, but they do put up a pretty solid fight. Now, overall, what do we think about the entirety of Vashtorr's release here? Vashtorr himself is sort of laughably bad, especially for his points cost. If he was significantly cheaper, I think I'd see him, but as a tanky and kind of beat sticky combat character, he's okay, but probably not worth the points. For a little bit of CP investment, especially in Chaos Space Marines, you can usually get a much more effective combat character for a lot less points. His support abilities are also sort of hilariously bad. They either affect enemy units that are already right up close to him, meaning that they're not really going to impact them before they have hit you, either with shooting or melee attacks, especially if Vashtorr is keeping kind of cagey and not just going face and standing in the front of your army, which, to be honest, he may just want to do, because like I said before, he doesn't do anything exciting enough for your opponent to want to actually shoot him. Overshooting at other Demon Engines in his army. So that just makes him a +1 to hit bot for Demon Engines, which you can just have a Warpsmith for like 200 points less. Spending that much on Vashtorr is a little bit silly. His Army of Renown, I think, is a little bit more exciting. It does focus heavily on Demon Engines, but those are kind of an underserved niche in the Chaos Space Marine Codex, and the stratagems you unlock are pretty good, especially being able to pile a 5-up damage ignore on something huge like a Lord of Skulls or a Brass Scorpion's kind of interesting, and having a lot of solid support effects for these smaller Demon Engines like Forge or Mauler Fiends also helps a little bit. I think the downside is that the Demon Engines aren't really the focal point of the Chaos Space Marine Codex, and so no Demon Engines in the Codex proper are particularly exciting. They all kind of hit a little bit under their weight class for no reason, mostly because I think they're paying taxes for the Demon Engine mechanic, where they get invulnerable saves, regeneration, and a stratagem to reduce damage targeting them, which means that their own damage output is a little bit lacking. As a whole, I think you could make a kind of interesting list for Demon Engines. I do think that there's going to be some issues with it. Your infantry in that list are going to be kind of laughably terrible, given that they lose all of their faction and sub-faction abilities. That's a tough sell right there, my guy. But on the flip side, you're still probably going to have to take them, because Demon Engines themselves, I don't think, are very good at holding objectives. Overall, bit of a miss for this one. Vashtorr is very bad. His Army of Renown is kind of whatever. So for the most part, I think he's kind of relegated to the arena of like challenge matches and casual play, which is, I don't know, maybe fine, but I think especially for a model as exciting as Vashtorr, we were hoping for a little bit more. I have talked in the past about how much I like the Vashtorr model, especially because of how like weirdly chaotic it looks, but unfortunately, this is not a very good use for him. And with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up the video. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. Let me know down in the comments what you think about Vashtorr and his Army of Renown. And thanks so much for watching. Again, I said that twice. Thanks as well for everyone who supports the channel, either over on Patreon at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise, YouTube channel members, Twitch subscribers. All you people are great. I love you. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and happy wargaming.